There are growing tensions between the Biden administration and Netanyahu, as you noted, and they center around a couple of different issues. One issue is that Israel seems intent upon doing an invasion of the Rafah area of Gaza. The U.S. would like for Israel not to send in a mass amount of ground forces into Rafah because there are so many refugees who've taken refuge in southern Gaza. The U.S. has alternative recommendations for how Israel can go after Hamas militants in Rafah without launching a major ground offensive. That's one area. Another area is on aid. Israel says enough aid, humanitarian aid, food, water, are getting into Gaza. The U.S. and our other allies disagree with that. I think most sources agree that about half the number of trucks are going into Gaza now as went in during peacetime. So that's another area where there's disagreement. And then there's also disagreement on the plans for a ceasefire and a hostage deal, with many countries now lining up around potential terms, but Israel and Netanyahu not agreeing to those at this point.
And as we've just heard, the discovery of a hernia and the surgery that Netanyahu is expected to undergo today, could delay that meeting with President Biden. But do you think it's going to do anything to impact Netanyahu's plans and progress in the war? I mean, do you think things are kind of just going to march on as they have been?
From what I understand, and as your correspondent very aptly described, this is a minor surgery, and he will be out for a short amount of time. He's appointed the justice minister to lead the government during that time. I don't see the justice minister or anyone else diverging from the policies of Netanyahu during that short period. So I don't expect this surgery will have any impact on the overall situation, unless, of course, there are complications with the surgery and Netanyahu is not able to resume his duties as quickly as expected.
Now, Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen appeared on ABC News This Week today, and he said, I want to get your take on this, that Biden, quote, needs to back up his no excuses language with real action, and then went on to say, quote, we have a situation where Netanyahu continues to essentially give the finger to the president of the United States, and we're sending more bombs, end quote. Your take on that?
Well, again, things are about as bad as they could be between Netanyahu personally and the Biden administration. They've really, next week it'll be 6 months since the October 7th attacks. We saw President Biden and the Biden administration at first embrace Netanyahu, embrace the Israeli government, embrace the Israeli people. But Netanyahu, over these 6 months, has taken a path that's increasingly not in line with what the U.S. expected and hoped for how it would approach this situation. Again, Israel has every right to go after all of the Hamas militants, but the way it is going about it, the U.S. does not agree with, in particular because there's so much collateral damage, so many women, children, people who are not obvious supporters or participants in Hamas have been killed and injured, and the U.S. cannot support that. There are growing calls for Israel, based on international law, to amend the way it is approaching the offensive actions in Gaza. And soon the U.S., U.K., and other countries are going to be bound by international law to conclude that the U.S., the Israel strategy is not in compliance with international law.
Certainly, as you said, it seems like it's as bad as it can get. Tensions have only worsened and worsened, but we will continue to talk about this. David Tafuri, former foreign policy advisor to President Obama, thank you so much for joining us today to discuss.